Hey guys, Maverick here, and we are back for another episode of Your Lie in April. So, last episode we finally learned a big truth in regards to Kousei's relationship with his mom, and it's quite a messed up one, right? He blames himself for his mother's death, and honestly, I would be inclined to say that might actually be true, right? As cruel as that sounds, you can't beat cold hard facts, right? And whether significant or not, I do believe there is some sort of correlation to this. Yeah, you could say his mother was already dying or whatnot, but still, those words, that kind of shock, definitely didn't help the situation, right? So, honestly, I really don't know how he's gonna get out of this situation, right? Obviously, he needs to learn to forgive himself, but how exactly is he going to do that? Potentially, it's probably going to be for Koari, right? If we're going by what we're seeing so far, but you know, as of right now, within the competition, how is he going to get out of this funk, right? I don't even know if he's ever told this situation to. Well, he definitely hasn't told this situation to Koari before. I doubt he even told this situation to Tsubaki, right? Maybe, maybe not, but still, yeah, I have no idea how he's going to get out of this situation. So I guess we'll just see together and find out. All right, getting started in 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, are we at a flashback episode again? Sure. Yep. He had his setback, and now he's making his comeback. Maternal instinct. Right back at ya. Star shine at night. Okay. Alright. Let's get this real quick. I'll see you guys in a second. Back. This is way too fast. He should still be able to keep a sense of rhythm. Well, I guess he's panicking. I'd think that stuff that would be more affected would be, you know, the roughness of the sound. You know, how light it's supposed to be, or how heavy a note is supposed to be. Compared with rhythm, which is something you can keep. Is he actually going to mess this up? Oh. Is he actually going to completely fail out of this competition? Hmm. It seems with the way things are going. Okay. By the way, this piece definitely isn't this long. Hmm. What is he actually going to do? Man, this suspense is killing. He stopped! He stopped! Okay. Hmm. Is it because he hasn't figured this out? So. So you want to play for her? That is quite the lovely scene. Really? I mean, I talked about this before. In previous episodes, how, you know, the obvious answer would be to play for Akari. Is that really the best answer, though? Okay, this is getting a bit ridiculous here. But, it's poetic, I guess. It's beautiful. It's pretty. Another one? Eh. Hmm. Don't tell me like Kaori's actually going to collapse after this performance. At last he's returned. Again, I do believe she knew of Kousei way before this. I gotta say though, that's a damn good scene. Man, playing under. Yeah. Well, this performance actually isn't supposed to be this long. You repeat it quite a few times. They're like, Kousei is evolving. Tsubaki's like, not me. Really? Why? Okay, okay. I heard that there's actually another after credit scene, so let me skip to that real quick. Okay. Yep, we got about a minute left. Let's see what's gonna happen. That's a nice way of putting it. Who are you? Okay. Okay, so what to make of this episode? I actually feel like my reaction is similar to the audience within here. Not really sure how to feel about the entire interpretation, about the whole situation. But let's try our best, shall we? Again, starting from the music. I think it should be fairly obvious here, you know, similar to what Takashi said, that there's sort of like three distinct Koseis that's playing this particular piece, right? We got the robotic, played by the book Kousei. We got the really frantic, really rough playing Kousei, and for the second time, and then finally we have the, I guess, true or real Kousei who allows his emotions to flow freely within the within the third performance of this particular piece. And you know, it's quite funny because this piece is actually one where I've actually heard a lot of listened to a lot of different interpretations before. The two pieces that were played before by Takashi and Emi, those I actually didn't listen. You know, those I was not familiar with, but Wrong Notes in particular I have heard before, and I have listened to different interpretations. I gotta say this has got to be the first time where I've seen someone use classrooms and distant sports teams and chalk on the blackboard to describe this particular piece. But well, you know, it's an interpretation, right? And really, that's what art and music is, right? It's you projecting what you're feeling, your own emotions onto the music piece, and so you can choose however you want to interpret this. The musician has a way of interpreting the music according to what his imagery is, his or her imagery is. The listener can also have his or her own imagery take place as well, because people's experiences are different. It's really hard to really, you know, transfer what a particular, you know, the composer has their own imagery, the musician, the artist interpreting it has their own imagery, and the listener has their own imagery as well. So it's all different. Now, personally, I would have liked it more if it was actually, say for instance, Koari making the comment about, you know, getting the feeling of classrooms, of distant sports teams and whatnot. I feel like that would make a lot more sense, and also a lot more believable, right? Emi saying this really, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit over the top, right? I mean, I get it. It's an anime, and we're supposed to feel like, okay, so this is how Kousei perfectly interpreted this so that this representation can be given to the audience, and so the audience can all feel the same thing. But that is, I don't know, that's laying it on a bit thick and quite unrealistic, if you ask me. Now, personally, this is pure personal opinion here, right? I've always been a fan of the interpretations which play this piece a bit more frantically, right? Like, my personal imagery of this has always been, so first of all, Chopin's etudes are typically divided into three parts, and it should be obvious in this etude as well, right? You got the first part, which is, you know, the wrong notes part, right? The beginning part. You got the middle part, which is very soft, very soothing, I guess you could say, for some people, and then finally you get the repeat again with the big finale, right? The grand finale at the very end. Personally, I've always interpreted this piece as, you know, like the first part being someone very frantic. They're in a frantic state of mind, a panic, almost borderline on panic. The middle part, I feel like, is more, you know, gathering themselves. It's actually more of sorrow and retrospective, not of love and romance, actually. And then finally, we got the last part, which you get this majestic feeling, right? This feeling of triumph, like you picked yourself up and you're back at it, and you're 10 times more powerful than you were before. That's how I always chose to interpret this certain piece, and that's why I also gravitate towards musicians that also interpret this piece in this kind of manner, right? So again, this is pure personal preference and personal opinion, right? There's no right or wrong about this. I've definitely heard other pianists that play in a style similar to what Kousei is playing here as well. Oh, more softer, more peaceful, and maybe even joyful kind of playing. And that is absolutely fine as well. But right? But you know, even just by me saying this, you can already infer two different things, right? One is I mentioned interpretation. So again, interpretation of a piece is very, very important, right? So you know, playing like a robot is definitely not a praise, no matter which kind of music circle you're in. And so I've always felt like you got to have a certain interpretation. You can't just completely play by the book and have no. Well, I guess in their instance, playing by the book would be also meaning bringing out the exact same emotion that the composer sort of intended. So I guess that could work as well. Maybe. But then a second part is, right, if you guys recall a few episodes ago, I was talking about, you know, the criticism against these kinds of musical competitions, and especially in regards to judging and how it's scored and whatnot, and how there's a certain prejudice, right? And I talked about different kinds of prejudice, but one that I did talk about is how a lot of competition musicians or competition pianists, they would tend to gravitate towards interpretations that are fairly inoffensive, right? Like, I just expressed my preference for the interpretations that are more frantic, that are more fast-paced, that sort of like they're almost tripping on themselves but not quite. I like that kind of interpretation, and you know, that is a very subjective opinion, right? And so if I were to judge, then you know, it's entirely possible that I, you know, because of my personal bias, did not like the way Kousei interpret this piece. So even though he might have played this flawlessly, he might have played it nothing wrong, at least in terms of what he's trying to portray, then I as a judge might be inclined to give him a lower score, just because it's not the style that I like this piece to be interpreted in. And so therein lies a lot of the criticism of the judging, and why I mentioned before, people have this tendency to gravitate towards inoffensive interpretations of the music, because then you wouldn't run the risk of alienating some judges while gaining favor from others. And it's, you know, it's entirely a coin toss as to what kind of preference the judge actually has, right? So we get into that situation as well. Now, in terms of the actual anime interpretation of this, so first of all, one thing to note is that they really repeated the second part a lot of times, right? So, again, even though, like, and I'm not saying that he played it 3 times, I'm saying that even in his final performance, he did not exactly go by the score, he repeated the middle part numerous times, right? At least twice or 3 times. I didn't, you know, really count, but you know, you can feel that it's they definitely repeated it a lot of times. And so I guess this was an interesting choice by the sound director, by the director, whoever was in charge of making this call. But I guess they wanted to have some sort of background music in order to stretch out the scene, and so they could allow for more, you know, monologues and thoughts from all the different characters, right? So this is definitely a deliberate choice. And it's also probably a deliberate choice to bring in different instruments as well, synthesizers and violins, in order to add on to this piece, and so to make the repetitiveness a little bit less obvious, I guess you could say. Now, again, this is a piano competition, right? And it's a solo pianist competition, so this is something that shouldn't happen, but this was an artistic decision that they made, and so, well, I guess it also fits in the theme as well, especially since obviously we got to say being inspired by Kaori, and so having violins accompanying it makes a lot of sense, right? But do note that this is pretty peculiar, and the way that they repeated the middle part was also quite peculiar as well, which probably also contributed to, at the very end, where the judges were like, have you even studied this music? And Emmy was saying sort of the same thing, right? Now, obviously, this is actually not the only part where Kousei deviates from the score. Definitely, like, I believe that in universe, you know, his repetition, his unneeded repetition of the middle part was probably true as well. We saw from the in-universe time that around 5 minutes passed during this performance. This performance piece typically is played in around 3 minutes. So we can probably say that this is something that he made at the, you know, we can say in universe Kousei made this deliberate choice to repeat the middle part numerous times, right? And definitely he due to his interpretation, it deviated from the score as well. There were different parts where he played softly, different parts where he played loudly, and different parts where he slowed down a bit, you know, not quite according to score, right? He put his own spin on things. And so that is why they were commenting how, you know, how it's different, and it seems that he didn't even properly learn the score, if you will. So we get that whole part. So again, musically, I know I've seen a lot of praise for this particular scene as well, but well, I just like a different interpretation of it, right? I'm not gonna lie, it was visually very appealing, and the music was great as well. It's just not my favorite way of playing this piece. So again, personal preference. And then I guess we should talk a little bit about the story, right? Because this is obviously, you know, I get the whole romance part, and, you know, it's very romantic, dedicating this song to Kaori, and I definitely like the visuals as well, with the sakura trees and whatnot, simplifying April, simplifying spring. We get that entire part, and oh, I did really like the entire part where, you know, it calls back to the title of this episode, right? The scenery I see with you, and especially the part with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then, you know, all his various bouts of looking at the night sky by himself with his different friends, and, you know, one open-ended question: how will it look with Kaori by my side, right? I thought that part was quite poetic as well, just in terms of the entire portrayal of the situation. However, you know, the entire romance, and of course, we got the part where what is it? Kaori was, you know, was bawling out to Kousei's performance, right? He definitely it reached her. We also got Tsubaki, who definitely noticed this, and so probably that's going to turn into drama down the line as well. But again, this further reinforces my belief that Kaori definitely knew of Kousei long before she first met him, supposedly, right? And probably she deliberately tried to get close to him for some reason. Maybe it's a situation similar to Emmy. Maybe she was inspired to play music because of him as well. Maybe not. We'll learn later, right? But I am leaning towards that kind of scenario playing out. And I guess one final thought I have was, again, I mentioned this briefly within this episode as well, and that is a callback to something that I also discussed in past episodes, right? So again, this entire concept of, you know, I just want to play for her, it's romantic and all, but again, I do have to question whether or not this is actually right in a kind of way, right? So in his past, Kousei was basically playing because of his mom, right? He wanted to play for he dedicated everything to his mom, and now it seems that, okay, because Kaori is here, he has a new person to dedicate this to her. But is this really a good way of going about this, right? Like I mentioned before, I do truly believe that music is something that you should play because you want to play. You play it for yourself. Others might be able to share within this, but that is still it should be something that's coming from yourself, right? Again, I'm not gonna go into like what is correct or wrong. There's no exact right answer. This is more of a not even a moral question, I guess a philosophical question, if you will. So, but I'm just saying that I don't believe that saying that he's regained his footing and so now he's able to play piano again and whatnot, purely because of the presence of Kaori is necessarily a healthy thing. I think that's what I'm getting at. And I mean, if it was just dedicating this particular piece, that would be fine, right? But I still hope that later on down the line he's playing this because it's him. It's Kousei speaking. He wants to play this piano, and this is the music. This is the kind of music that he wants to play. This is the kind of interpretation that Kousei wants, not because of a particular person. I don't know. Just some food for thought. Just my take on the situation. And so yeah, and oh, and I guess one final thought is in regards to, you know, his entire situation with his mom, right? So I did like how, you know, we got this entire piece of, you know, Kousei, the guy who's like a puppet on a string, is finally cutting loose of those strings. You know, I get that whole part, and it's definitely great, right? But see, my interpretation of this situation now is not that he's necessarily in the shadow of his mom, but he feels remorse and regret for his particular actions and words at the very end of his mother's life, which I feel like is slightly different from having this sort of psychological trauma due to his mother forcing him to play in a particular way. Again, that's my take on the situation. Maybe I'm interpreting this completely wrong. It's just that, I don't know, I just felt like this kind of, what he actually, his resolution in this episode and whatnot shouldn't be enough to, turn his perception of his mom around. At least, that part didn't really make sense to me anyways. And if someone is there to, if one of you guys want to shed some light on how you choose to interpret this situation, let me know as well. And to me, it doesn't feel completely right. So yeah. So there we go. Episode 10 of Your Lie in April. This was a rather long review, but that's great, right? That's because I have lots of personal opinions, and that's something that I would like to share, right? Again, do note that I separate, what is stuff that I feel like is more objective, and I like to share with you guys, trivia and whatnot. But of course, at the same time, I do want to express my personal feelings as well. And feel free to leave your personal feelings as well, and let me know, and maybe even have some discussion, right? Even though this is a rather old anime already. So yeah, there we go. Your Lie in episode 10. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.